that's what we're trying to fill, is that sort of mode where there's going to be this bridge between this decentralized utility, coin, token, exactly which one it's going to be, I'm not sure yet, but with this idea of there has to be someone ultimately helping the average everyday citizen. We have millions of people across the world right now that are very happy opening a wallet, saving their information, taking this leap, and that's going to continue to grow. But with 7 billion people on this planet, the overwhelming majority of people, want to slow down, want to do things sort of traditionally. They're interested, but they need someone holding their hand. And I think you're going to see decentralized platform mated with expertise, and that's what's really going to go. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a central bank currency that tips the scales.
And good afternoon, everyone. Today I have with me is Matt Zaner from Zaner Precious Metals and now Zaner Digital. Think about this. The new is going to be the old. Legacy finance, traditional regulated finance with on-roads, on-ramps, and off-ramps from fiat into crypto with the personal service that you would expect. We can actually pick up the phone, call the brokerage house, call the metals dealer, now calling the cryptocurrency brokerage with a person face-to-face. Because, almost every exchange that you go to, everything's by email. There's no personal service. It's you get the email, you hope somebody answers it, and if you lose or have a problem, hopefully somebody from customer service 3-6 days in the future will get back to you. Your ticket's in. But think about bringing the regulated financial industry where there's a lot more trust, quote unquote, between banks for interbank transfers. So early adopters, they're going to stay on the exchanges. Persons 40, 50, 60 retirees, they're going to want to come into something that they're already familiar with. Traditional banking, credit cards, a banking statement, tax statements issued. That's where we're going. Now blend these two worlds together. And this is what Zaner Digital is offering. This is a glimpse into the future of how 50% of people are going to start to transact and adopt cryptocurrency. Jumping right onto a decentralized exchange or over to, like I say, a digital exchange somewhere, that's going to be a little tech unsavvy for most. They're going to want to go the more comfortable and traditional route. Call somebody if I have a problem, lost my password, I have a problem, help me custodian or vault that asset that I just bought, liquidate it for me. So to go through how this new future is going to blend and how we're going to morph into this next iteration of mass adoption of cryptocurrency. Matt Zaner right here from Zaner Digital. Matt, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to talk to your listeners and your audience. As you said, right, we've been around 40 years. Doing all sorts of financial services. We'll call them legacy finance. Obviously, things are really changing into the future. And I certainly see crypto as a major, major part of what not only we're doing into the future, but I think the future of finance in general. FinTech is certainly an exciting place to be.
Fiat currencies, as you spoke about when we had a little conversation before we started here, the inflation's running. So where do people move to? You have a few choices only in today's world where people seem like they're being boxed into a corner. You have precious metals. You could get land or real estate, and then you have crypto. I mean, if there's any other asset class out there that you think people might be able to jump into, I'm all ears. Right. But, it seems that everybody is being, sort of funneled through a cattle chute into just a couple asset classes, and that's it. So right. How do you feel this is changing the landscape?
Right. So with 0% interest rates, here and sort of across the world, everybody's been driven to chase returns. I'm a huge believer in real assets, as you just said, whether it's real estate, whether it's precious metals, which obviously we sell as well, or whether it's crypto. And crypto, what's really interesting is it not only is a real asset in many cases, but also has utility in many cases. which is a really interesting item. And it is somewhat, the way gold has operated for 10,000 years. It's a real asset, but also has utility as a means of transaction.
El Salvador just had passed all the new Bitcoin legislation where it's now legal tender. So
Absolutely.
yeah, how long is that going to be before it's the next country? Because in crypto, when it happens and the next person says, wow, light bulb has gone off, now what? So what do you think the next nation or the next nation or the next nation, and how long do you think it would take to arrive to the next nation now making, doesn't have to be Bitcoin in particular, but some sort of cryptocurrency as a national sovereign instrument of settlement?
I think it's going to happen faster than we think. I don't think, had you looked, a few years ago and say, oh, the time horizon might be 50 years, and a lot of people think that's a really long time. 50 years actually comes pretty quickly these days when you're talking about overhauling how a government might work, right? Because if you don't have control of money, you really don't have control of power. And I think government wants to take as long as they possibly can to understand it so they can understand how they can control it to hold on to their power. El Salvador, amazingly, has made a very fast jump. And I think if you see a few more countries follow suit, you're going to have a lot of people saying, hey, wait a second, I can't get left behind. So sure, is America and sort of the EU going to be slow and not go super fast? Yeah, I believe that. Do I believe the utility of crypto continues to grow exponentially, whether it is at a state level or whether it's just at a peer-to-peer level? Yeah, the utility is going to continue to explode.
Yeah, and that fear of missing out, or FOMO as they call, when it comes to the national level of I shouldn't say international bank, but more of a settlement bank for a nation that uses whatever it is. We have our own central banks here in the U.S., but others don't. They rely on Bank for International Settlements or something. There's a lot of talk in these most high echelons using digital cryptocurrency. It could be central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, but we're talking more staying on the private end. So these two worlds are going to start to evolve, and the FOMO is going to be out there. Governments are running to catch onto it. Citizens are running to catch onto it. Two different parallel paths. So the central bank digital currency on that national offering, sovereign, and then the personal Bitcoin, Monero, Ethereum, or whatever it is. So these two parallel avenues, I mean, which one's going to excel faster, and where's the greatest adoption going to take place first? Do you think it'll be on the national level, or do it be at individuals?
I think it's going to be the decentralized level is the one that's going to get the greatest adoption. So it's not going to be obviously at the central bank level. It's going to be a Bitcoin or whatever the next version that people think might be the best. But I think where the hybrid's going to come is not necessarily from the state level, but it's going to come from the support level, right? So right now, a lot of the big questions from the average everyday citizen is, well, what happens if I lose my password? What happens if I don't understand this? Who can I call? Who's ultimately responsible, right? And that's a question that a lot of people can't answer. They're used to saying, okay, I could always call my banker and he can pull, some money here or trace money there, or I could call, my stockbroker and say, hey, I forgot my password, what's in my account, right? And that's what we're trying to fill, is that sort of mode where there's going to be this bridge between this decentralized utility, coin, token, exactly which one it's going to be, I'm not sure yet, but with this idea of there has to be someone ultimately helping the average everyday citizen. We have millions of people across the world right now that are very happy opening a wallet, saving their information, taking this leap, and that's going to continue to grow. But with 7 billion people on this planet, the overwhelming majority of people, want to slow down, want to do things sort of traditionally. They're interested, but they need someone holding their hand. And I think you're going to see decentralized platform mated with expertise, and that's what's really going to go. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a central bank currency that tips the scales.
You know, the early adopters are the ones that are willing to spend an hour or 2 hours to figure out how to even send a single transaction from one wallet address to another, to get that account open, to even figure out what the platform looks like and running. But, you know, in e-commerce.
Well, not only that, but they also get over their fear, right? Early adopters have gotten over their fear, where most people, and I don't know what that ratio is, 80-20, you know, 80% of people may never be able to get over that fear if it's completely opaque to them.
E-commerce,
Right.
2 clicks and your sales are what, down 60-70%. 2 clicks if they have to go further into the website to initiate the buy. Can you imagine mom and pop, elderly, retired, drawing retirement savings, trying to figure out the whole wallets when they can barely do email?
Right. And to your point, what's great about it is, you think about e-commerce, if something doesn't go right, you can call Amazon and there's a, you know, the final authority as to what happened with my transaction. Am I going to get my money back or not? Right now, that doesn't exist. And I think it's slowly growing to, look, we're not going to necessarily be able to grab money back from a wallet. You know, that's the way it works. But there's going to be someone that they can trust to get the correct answer, right? That's, I think, the final authority. It may not be the answer I want, but it's the correct answer. And for too many people, they don't know what the correct answer is or even where to get the correct answer. And I think as soon as people do get that trust in getting what that correct answer is, it's going to be that plus decentralized token. You're off to the races.
Yeah, because right now, one of the most difficult things is the on-ramp, off-ramp, taking it from fiat, initiating the purchase somewhere. You know, either you're going to come into an exchange that's already taken the lead on, you know, the on-ramping and the KYC, or people are going to go to a decentralized exchange. And I cannot see in the wildest dream the first time you're going to touch into crypto jumping onto a decentralized swap platform to try to get your fiat turned into something else when you don't even understand what gas fees are to try to initiate that. So people are familiar with stockbroker, metals brokers. They're so familiar with it. It's, you know, it's been with us for how long now? More century and a half. Right. People are used to that. So it's going to be, I think, much easier for the adoption to be able to blend the world of what was before to the new digital on-ramping. And then, you know, off-ramp too. If you're going to liquidate something, how do you take that into fiat again and then get it out actually into your bank? I know there's a couple services that do that. You know, you come in, you can sell your crypto and then turn it back into a US dollar and then, you know, rewire it back to your bank for a fee each way, along the way. Right. But custodianship, and, you know, that's like the short-term holding, but vaulting, like let's say I want to buy a Bitcoin, 2 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, whatever, 10, 20, 30, but I want to just hold it. You know, I think it's generational legacy wealth, right? I just want to buy it now. I'm going to hold it for 20 years and I'll talk to you all later. Send me a yearly statement. So vaulting and then the on-road, off-road liquidation. I mean, that's confusing talk for a lot of people who are even listening to this and understanding cryptocurrency for the first time.
And so we're trying to help fill that from that idea, what you were just saying, where we're taking an experience that they were used to, whether the stock brokerage experience or precious metals, you know, type of experience, and mating that to what they're moving into here with crypto. And so when we're going to be vaulting for people, as they, you know, buy from us and put it into our vault, we're going to give them feedback that they're used to seeing. We're going to be giving them statements in the way that they're used to seeing. They're going to, you know, file their taxes, and we're going to be up on, you know, what they sort of need to do and how it works. And they're going to ask us questions, and we're going to be here to pick up the phone and answer those questions. We're going to be able to make it so that that on-ramp and that off-ramp is comfortable.
The loss of control, because you hit it on the head, taxes. You know, governments are terrified of losing control of revenue and capital gains coming off of this. Now, again, you know, I watch a lot of things from Nomad Capitalist about, you know, getting second passports and trying to limit tax liability. But in the crypto game, people might think that they can run and hide and do all these transactions. That's not possible. I mean, you might get away with it now, but in the future, when algorithms get better, they're going to start tracing every transaction down the chain, and then taxes are going to be due eventually. Taxman cometh. So it's better to sleep comfortably at night knowing that it's done correctly, that everything's on the table. And that's the kind of way I like to operate. So I don't always have to be looking over my shoulder. Ooh, I did that. So the tax implication is what a lot of people don't understand. Right now, cryptocurrency, I think it falls under real estate. So, what if that were to change? Then how would so having somebody that's familiar with being able to issue the correct documents for tax and answer some of these taxation questions is just a huge bonus as well.
Yeah. You say it's, treated like real estate, and it kind of is, but what's interesting is that, there's still warring factions, at the top levels of government. IRS says it's an asset, the SEC says maybe not, Treasury Department says it's a currency, it's still completely undecided. And right, how does the average citizen navigate that? It's a tough one.
And it's all about that loss of control. You mentioned those three agencies there, and we could probably list off a whole bunch of others that are just even in the financial arena, CFTC being one. They're going to lose control. And I don't know how much corralling there will be for a government terrified of losing control of its central bank authority and the ability to control money itself, which is the ability of government to control not only military, but economy and citizens. But that fear of loss of control, that battle does exist at the top levels here. So where do you think it's going to finally shake out? Because, if you're sitting up at the top levels of government and you see this thing that all the citizens are starting to adopt that's completely outside of your control, that's going to be a terrifying thing for power elite that have been in power for what? We're talking multi centuries, if not millennia of control of money so far. Right. And then this thing comes out. And if you think it's just going to quietly roll over in the middle of the night and be like, all right, crypto, hey, we're done with our central banking, another thing coming. So I think there's going to be a lot of battles at these higher levels of government finance, central banking, et cetera, to try to set groundwork for how people can operate in the crypto space. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're 100% correct. We were talking a little bit offline about how if you don't control money, you don't control power. And I am surprised that the federal government, at least the U.S. federal government, hasn't stepped in to regulate this already. And I think what's happened, I don't think they have because they don't understand it. And what I think is going to happen is that they're going to continue delaying any action until they fully understand it. And what I think is going to happen during that delay is the adoption is going to continue growing. And by the time federal governments decide to really make a big move, I think it's going to be too late. I think the ship is sailing now. And if the federal government doesn't make a large regulatory move within this year, I don't know how much they're going to be able to control. And I think that's great.
Yeah, do you think they'll make a move next year and then try to grandfather their moves back in and say, well, we made the decision now, we weren't so stable on it in 2017, 18, 19, so everything that we're saying now applies and it's retroactive for the last 3 years? Or do you think that once they finally make a decision on some sort of legislation or, I don't know, control, overseership, whatever the laws are going to be for that moving forward, it starts on that day? Or do you think they're going to try to backlog it and say, well, we finally decided, so all those previous years of transactions will fall under the new legislation?
It's a great question. And I think they might try something retroactive. I think when they finally open their eyes as to how dangerous this is to them, I think they're going to try to overstep. But I think they're also going to find out that they can't. There's going to be too much, there's too much money, there's too much stuff already happening. There's going to be too much pushback against that. And so, okay, great. I think they're going to have to continue to scale down what it is that they're going to be able to do. And even from there, once you sort of let the cat out of the bag, once you let people transact freely, openly, easily, without being regulated, boy, that's a hard cat to put back in the bag.
Yeah, it certainly is. So the early adopters who've been able to go Wild West style for the last 5, 6 years on this, before you didn't even have KYC on a wallet, you just kind of open it up, even in an exchange back in the 2015, 16, they didn't even care who you were. They never even
Right.
asked.
That's
Just
right.
like come to the exchange, throw some money in. You had to deposit crypto to start trading inside there. But again, that was the whole thing. The on ramp and the off ramp was incredibly difficult back 5 years ago. But once
Right.
you were in there, it was Wild West. Nobody cared. There were no tax
Right.
statements. It was just like trade, do whatever. Finally, some regulation came in around 2018, and they started to want to know who was inside their exchanges. So that was a small percentage, let's say 5% of the global populace, even less, probably 1%. But Matt, where do you see it going out at the full end here? Let's say take it out into the future 10, 12 years, 15 years from now. What do you think the global adoption rate is going to be? Because I know a lot of people right now don't even use credit cards. I know there's a handful of people who don't even have, ATM cards. There's a segment of people who just don't want to operate in even the, say, quote unquote, traditional space that we have with credit cards, bank cards, debit cards, et cetera. That's going to always exist. There's never going to be 100% uptake and adoption of a new technology. So where do you think we could go on the far end here of numbers on a global level?
Right. So I think your example is perfect. And it's what we have talked internally about a lot. I think the adoption 10, 20 years out, as you asked, is the same adoption of credit cards, right? We talked about going from cash, where everybody held on to something and used that as a means of transfer, as a means of utility, to, okay, I've got this plastic card and I trust that some clearinghouse, some firm is going to properly make the transaction happen, and I'm going to end up with money back in my bank account. And I think that took a little time, right? That actually started out as a gas card, and I was able to purchase gas with it, and then you purchase more, items, and eventually became the dominant means of transaction. And I think this is really the extension of that. I think it will be a faster, cheaper, cleaner transaction than credit cards. And I think whatever that number is, and I don't know what it is it 90% of the world transacts, let's call it in some fashion of electronic form today? I think that's where crypto is going.
Yeah, because I think the uptake in different nations too that have no other options for banking. So in Africa, the uptake in adoption of new tech that can facilitate what you're talking about, transaction of money, whatever that may be in form,
right,
happens faster where they just don't have traditional banking. So they're going to jump straight on something on an electronic platform that'll be able to transact. So
I mean, with crypto, you don't need banking, and you don't necessarily need all those regulations. You need, electricity. You need an internet, access point. If you have, and I guess maybe a cell phone, right, or a smartphone. If you have those three things, you can transact soon to be almost immediately anywhere, and that's just too useful.
yeah, because you think about how long did that take from when you first, I remember those days too, when you had the paper and it ran over and they did that in the gas cards. Golf, I think, was the first one that did it. I remember Dad had a golf card that we used to do that.
Yeah.
Do you think about late 1970s until what was the full saturation? Probably so that, let's say that whole entire process took 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how long do you think this will take? 5 years? It's going to be much faster. It's going to be a consolidated, just quickening, if you will, of that introduction, uptake, saturation point, or full global usage.
Yeah. If credit cards took 30 years, cut it in half. And we're already 8, 9 years into this, as we are. So yeah, I think less than 10 years from now, I don't know if we'll be at the preponderance of transactions happening via crypto, but we are going to be a very, very significant percentage of transactions.
I want to stay in the traditional banking sector for a second. So interbank transfers. So let's say I want to open an account and I have physical fiat. I want to be able to move it in to, so which banks might I use, or which banks are you using? I've heard tale of Chase and US Bank Core for now to use in the transactions. And so Chase has international branches. So how does that intersect with what you're doing and to on-ramp to change that fiat over into crypto then?
In the not too distant past, you had these major banks that said, oh, crypto, no way. but now they're changing their story. Jamie Dimon, CEO of Chase said, not a chance, but if you look at all his rhetoric in the last 2 years, he's becoming an adopter, of crypto, and Chase is becoming an adopter of crypto. And so Chase is one of the ways that someone could send us, fiat, we can accept that money and then convert it obviously into Bitcoin or Ethereum. That's going to continue to improve. U.S. Bank is another one that we're talking to and that we work with that is allowing transactions to happen that are in the crypto space. There are many other major banks that are happening. One of the things that's really changing, and you had mentioned sort of Wild West and AML KYC, that is changing. What you're seeing now are firms like us that have been around 40 years and have been in a regulated industry for 40 years and understand what regulation and anti-money laundering and know your customer, what those things look like and feel like. And so as players like us get involved and have the proper registrations and have the proper setups and have the proper experience, major institutions like Chase are saying, okay, these are the types of firms that we can get behind and help process. And so this onboarding and offboarding is getting more accessible and more, I don't want to say safer, but it's getting more user-friendly, more comfortable, more trust for the end user. So I think the next financial crisis, to answer your question, is going to accelerate the adoption of crypto. And it's going to accelerate people's fear of fiat. I don't know if we'll be at the preponderance of transactions happening via crypto, but we are going to be a very, very significant percentage of transactions. One of the things that's really changing, and you had mentioned sort of Wild West and AML KYC, that is changing. What you're seeing now are firms like us that have been around 40 years and have been in a regulated industry for 40 years and understand what regulation and anti-money laundering and know your customer, what those things look like and feel like. And so as players like us get involved and have the proper registrations and have the proper setups and have the proper experience, major institutions like Chase are saying, okay, these are the types of firms that we can get behind and help process. And so this onboarding and offboarding is getting more accessible and more, I don't want to say safer, but it's getting more user-friendly, more comfortable, more trust for the end user.
Yeah, that was the thing. As soon as you spoke cryptocurrency in 2016, 17, 18, people were like, where's the door? I want to leave the room. I don't want to be around this conversation. I don't want to be associated with this at all. Please don't tarnish us by saying we're associated with crypto. But now it seems that all of that has completely changed over. I don't know if it was a deflection back then, because Jamie Dimon, I remember he says, I'll fire any trader on the floor who even buys crypto. But then over in Europe that day that they were the largest purchaser of Bitcoin through the entire space for that 24 hours. At the same time, they made a news announcement in the United States, I'll fire anybody who's trading that, but they're over there buying in Europe. So you're getting those kind of crossed messages. And, there was so much FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's you're going to hear a bunch of different keywords and things when you're talking about crypto, from the FOMO, which is fear of missing out, the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But yeah, that surrounded the whole space there.
Yeah, I think there was a ton of misconception also back then. I think people thought, oh, crypto, that's where criminals transact. It's not, for every day. And, we're this major bank and we can't, put our reputation at risk there. And as it turns out, less than 1% of all transactions, on crypto is criminal enterprise, which is less than what it is in fiat.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what the criminal enterprise is in fiat, actually. Bribes, purchases of illicit substances. I mean, the percentage on a US dollar basis, on a paper basis, being used every day, or straight up money laundering through banks. I mean, all those banks caught over in Hong Kong laundering funds by the billions, plural. That's crypto valuations weren't even that high for a while, in billions,
Right. You know, and what's really interesting about it too is that, you know, although maybe you can track fiat via individual serial numbers on the bills, it's a really hard endeavor. But what we discovered, you know, with this colonial pipeline situation and the FBI being able to track movements along the blockchain, they were able to see what happened and actually stopped and recovered illicit, you know, activity. And I think that's only going to grow, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, could I maybe go off base here a little bit and make a comment
Sure.
on that? Uh, I find it a little interesting that the hackers who were so technologically light years ahead to break into that system, lock everything out, demand the payment, then they sent that Bitcoin instead of using Monero, and they sent it to a custodial wallet where they couldn't even spend the $50 to go get a Trezor or a Ledger and then have it sent to there, so they had the private keys to control it. I see that's part of something I just makes me scratch my head on that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point, and I think right, we're going to see this battle between, you know, let's say illicit and government, you know, trying to one's always going to be sort of ahead of the other and going back and forth and back and forth. But I think at the end of the day, what we're going to see, or what we are seeing, is that it's what's happening is only legitimizing utility in crypto, and that's a good thing. You know, whether or not criminals will end up using, you know, a Monero or something else more opaque, we'll find out. But it's still, it's every action that's happening is legitimizing the utility of crypto, which means it's only going to grow.
You know, so far up at Zaner Digital there, you're licensed to Ethereum and Bitcoin. So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin being digital gold, quote unquote, because you're in the precious metals industry too, and that's your core based business there. So the precious metals, gold and silver, and now with the crypto, and then the whole comparison of Bitcoin being digital gold. So what are your feelings on that? And again, you're licensed just for Ethereum and Bitcoin so far. Any comparisons? Because that's being thrown around and stuck to the wall everywhere. Digital gold, digital gold, digital gold. So you being in there, what's the real feeling about that?
I think there are pros and cons to that argument. I think one of the pros is that people are looking at it as a decentralized, you know, store of value and a decentralized utility of transaction. And from that standpoint, both gold and Bitcoin can do that. They are somewhat universally accepted means of value and means of transaction. Where they differ is that for Bitcoin to operate the way it's operating, you still need electricity, you still need, you know, the internet, you still need some sort of computer device, smartphone, whatever, on both sides in order to transact. Where with gold, you've got 10,000 years of data and of experience to say, if I shave off this amount of gold and I give it to you, you know, those transactions happen. The world could be coming to an end. Those transactions are still going to happen. If I lose my you know, wallet password on Bitcoin, I'm sort of out of luck. Much harder to lose physical gold. I may forget the combination to my safe, but I can still take a hammer and a chisel, right, and get at it. So I think from the idea that they do similar items, yes, I get the comparison. But if the world really went into a terrible spot, gold has 10,000 years and it's a tangible asset. I want to hold gold. In a more normal atmosphere, I think Bitcoin is tremendous. So I'd love to see people really have experience with both.
And, you know, the use of precious metals, you know, taking it a little step further, silver was not the value of something that could buy another item. go back 2,000 years, 79 AD, when we're going to get the same planetary geometry in 2024 as we had in 79 AD, the amount of grains of wheat were the measure for the silver. So it's backwards now. Yeah. So you think the food was the value to measure out the metal in its value.
Right.
So that's how far back we're going, even where food was the measure of unit for the weight. So, I mean, we can go back how many thousands of years on this. I think the changes in the sun on the 400-year cycle is really going to have an effect on food production moving forward, that all grains prices are going to spike incredibly. And from this year forward, 2021 harvest season coming in, especially at the apex in 2024, the amount of grains grown globally on the commercial level, we know at 45 degrees north and above is going to decrease yield from this year forward. And we're just going to have less and less on the global market. And then you see places like Brazil that are supposed to be the savior, taking up the extra bit, are now in mega droughts that can't supply the extra that used to.
We seem to have been able to push through all the weather issues that we've had over the last, let's say, 8 years or so. You know, we've had some decent droughts here, but our genetics and our fertilizer technique has gotten, you know, us over that hump. But right, it's an interesting question. Have we reached the pinnacle of that? And will these, you know, the droughts and whatnot start to get worse and worse? And then we got a problem.
Yeah, you're right. So far, tech has saved everything.
Yeah.
You know, because you can get the potash at any time. There's no longer you know, a regional bottleneck on how much, you know, fertilizer, potash, or whatnot you can get into the fields. So we'll see, especially with the global trade system. If there's something going to be, well, let's hope we can continue to get break bulk in on, you know, 60,000 tons of this, 50,000 tons of that to keep the system moving. This move over to crypto, in my opinion, is part of it. It was, if you look back at the cycles in history, and if you go back about every 400 years, especially around the 1600 era, money changed, governments changed, etc. But you ask, why did it change in such an all-encompassing manner? But then we're back at the same point again now, and cryptocurrency is here.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different system, as well as we start to see this global governance system coming out. It's quite different than sovereign national identities for governments to operate. This whole system, everything, the Great Reset, everything's moving forward to reset an entire system. And you wonder, why would they want to reset everything at this juncture, right this second, when all the forecasts for timelines are coming in on this 400-year iteration starting this year and last year? It's real quirky on the timing. But you find the same fingerprints, I call it the fingerprints of the grand solar minimum, going back every 400 years. You get these giant leaps in the way society's operated, controlled, overseen, or governed.
Yeah, I don't know that particular theory that you're talking about, but it's definitely interesting.
That's my specialty, is studying the solar cycles and how it's going to push food prices. But I also see that the movement of money is going to be a full part of this, because the last three things that always happen: population migration, economic collapse, and then rearrangement, and then a lot of government structures rearrange themselves. So a very specific core, and you talk about core inflation, a core part of this grand solar minimum reset for society, or change of society, is the change of the money system. What's valuable, what is value, how can value carry? That's why I've been so interested in crypto from the beginning, because I see it's an integral part of the whole system moving forward. If indeed my research and others is true about the sun cycles, then the crypto fits right into that.
But to sort of go back to that, you know, is it gold or not? I can take a bar of gold and I can put it underneath my pillow and nothing's going to happen to it. Versus, you just can't do that in the electronic world. You know, as good as it's going to get, right? It'll never be that sitting there in my hand and I've got it and I can give it in someone else's hand and get a loaf of bread back. That just can't get replaced. You know, as I said, there's 10,000 years of that history of as a means of transaction. Bitcoin, or whatever crypto it's going to be, it's going to get better and better, and we're going to get better and better at it. But if you're looking for the proverbial, when the shit hits the fan, which one would I rather have? Again, I think it's both. I think it's both.
Okay, so this that'll dove right in. how about SHTF situation? Like you've seen a lot of previous financial crises through your whole, let's say, career. What about this next one that's unveiling? And it's kind of in a slow motion train wreck right now, and we can see it happening. Devaluation, inflation everywhere running rampant, and that's going to be uncontrollable, especially at core when we're talking about energy and food pricing. Once that can be no longer hidden, then it's going to run. So how do you survive this one? I mean, you've already been through, so you went through the financial crisis 2, 8, and 9, back at the beginning of the century, quote unquote. So late 1990s. So what do you see for this one? And how do you think, speaking of gold and having gold, precious metals, silver, and also crypto this time, which is something new that wasn't available during the last financial crises, if that's a word. So how do you see it coming out? Like, how do I survive this one?
So I think that, as I said before, the utility of crypto is going to continue to grow. And the next time we have a financial crisis, and I agree with you, one's coming on the horizon, it's going to grow the utility of crypto exponentially. One of the problems that we have right now is inflation. We have a problem with fiat. There's nothing standing behind it. What stands behind it is government, and government does what they want to do with it. They want to spend, right? How do you get reelected? You spend, and the sort of famous quote is, what is the politician's, job? And most people would like to say and want to say, well, to represent my constituency. But if you ask a politician what his job is, David, what's his job? To get reelected. That's the politician's job. What is the job of crypto? The job of crypto is agnostic. It does whatever the code says it's going to do. And so as we're sitting here in this world of inflation, as we're sitting here and saying, okay, if I don't want dollars anymore, what do I want? What do you want? Euros? Do you want Japanese yen? All of the stable world currencies are in the same spot. I think the US is on its way to being in debt 200% times its GDP. It's unsustainable. So as this crisis happens, you have to decide, where do I want to hold my money? Well, you could have some in real estate, which is great. I think you could have some in precious metals, which I think is great. But the easiest form of transaction will be in crypto. And the utility of that is enormous. And so the demand of that is going to be enormous. Doesn't matter if you're, and the opposite side of what I was saying about gold before is where I could take a slice of gold, put it in somebody's hand and buy bread. If I wanted to get something from 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away, and the financial world is in chaos, well, get on my phone. I don't think the internet's going to go down. I mean, it may happen, as I said, if you want to go all the way out, but I don't think that's going to happen because of the next financial crisis. We can transact. We can contract, and we can transact using Bitcoin or whatever crypto it's going to be, and we all will have knowledge of what that value is. So I think the next financial crisis, to answer your question, is going to accelerate the adoption of crypto, and it's going to accelerate people's fear of fiat.
Last question here.
Yeah.
What kind of ecosystem of backing cryptocurrencies do you think will evolve out of that? You'll have a gold-backed crypto, because if the financial system's collapsing around and there's a value peg for something to equal something, but if everything's crashing or everything's inflating, there'll be nothing to peg anything else against to hold that stable value as we understand today. So what kind of backing do you think ecosystem will roll out of the crypto? Obviously, you'll have silver-backed crypto. There's going to be gold-backed crypto. You're going to have just store value like Bitcoin. And how do you see that ecosystem evolving out of this, something backing another coin or a token?
Right. So I think you have two different paths that it's going down. In the sort of stable coin area, you've got something that's backing that coin. And honestly, I think that is really just an improved means of transacting or delivering an underlier. So if I wanted to hold gold, I could physically hold gold, dig a hole and put it in my backyard, and I think that's awesome. But if I wanted to send that gold to somebody, that's a bit harder. You got to put it on a Brinks truck or someplace else and insure it. And so the delivery, the transaction of that is difficult. Stable coins, I think, are terrific at being able to take an asset and send it and change ownership to somebody else. It's a terrific mechanism. But there is still has to be faith and trust in that whoever is running that stablecoin is in fact doing what they say they're doing. If it's supposed to be each coin is backed by 1 ounce of gold, you have to believe that, right? And so I think you have a real dichotomy there where you're going to have this idea of change of ownership is great, but utility and transaction, I think, is going to be driven by faith in the underlying code. So Bitcoin's been around now long enough where people feel like, okay, its blockchain is pretty robust. We haven't seen any major hacks of the blockchain. Maybe some exchanges have been hacked, but not the blockchain, not the underlying technology. Ethereum has been pretty well tested, and Ethereum is a real interesting one because it does so many more things on the blockchain than what Bitcoin can do. Bitcoin can only transact, doesn't have any programming, any smarts available in that. So I think you're going to see it's going to be faith in the underlying code that drives it, rather than necessarily faith that there's something underlying, like a physical asset underlying the coin. No, it's going to be faith in the code, that the code itself, as I said before, is agnostic, is immutable, and is as hack-free as it can be. And so you need time to test that. And so I think Bitcoin is way out in front of everybody because of the years that it's been around, the attention that it's attracted, the billions if not trillions of dollars that have transacted on that, and the billions if not trillions of dollars of people trying to attack that blockchain. And so far, it's completely defensible.
Yeah, the 51% attacks, don't think that's even possible on that network anymore with all the safeguards that were put in place to prevent that.
Right.
So going from the code back to the human level, getting that personal touch back with what you offer there at Zaner Digital.
We try to take our 40 years of experience in a regulated financial market and industries here in the United States and take that same experience that we provide our current customers and apply it to this next exciting asset class, crypto. And what that means is, right now, I think the typical experience is a new person to crypto has to find a wallet. Well, let's back up. What is a wallet? Has to understand what that is. Has to get a password. And how do you get a password? And okay, maybe I go to this exchange or that exchange, but do I know that they're regulated in the United States? Are they not in the United States? All these questions, right? And they don't know where to go or how to do it. So what we've tried to do is say, look, we've always been available by phone with experts to help you through this process on futures and on Forex. So the same thing is going to apply. You can call us, you can email us, you can chat with us, however you want to communicate to us. It's our name, zanerdigital.com. Zaner is my last name. It's a family-owned and operated, firm. I'm putting my reputation on the line, telling you that this is safe. One of the things that we've tried to do is we've tried to make it as simple as possible. We don't have charts and graphs and bells and whistles and all these other things going on that we see at a lot of these trading sites. We're not trying to replace trading. We're not trying to sort of help you trade. We're trying to help you get involved in a clear and confident and comfortable level. If you want to take that money out, it's an easy transaction, the exact same thing. You just sell some of the crypto and you tell us what wallet you want it to be sent to. We send it to that wallet. If you want it to be converted back into fiat, you just put that instruction in there, we convert it to fiat, and we send you a wire, or an ACH back to your bank account. So we tried to make it very simple And we try to take the same principles that we've operated on for the last 40 years and put it into this new regulated class.
I hope everybody out there, has a little bit greater insight into we're seeing all these things play out in front of us. So it's not just we're talking a specific laser niche here. This covers a wide array of all these changes in society happening to all of us, all of our countries, all of the money systems across the planet. It's all happening. So, we're just trying to connect a few dots that might be seemingly unconnected and then make it into a wider picture. Do appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of our conversation, and I'll see you next time. Matt, any final words, any closing thoughts? I always like to, leave the person I'm talking to with the last ideas that you want to put out.
I really appreciate the time. I love talking to the audience. I love, spreading the gospel, because I truly believe, as I've been saying, that this utility is going to grow, and those that get comfortable with this utility will be much better served when they see that, oh my God, I could be transacting using crypto, and that's going to be cheaper, faster, better for me than fiat. So any chance I get to spread the gospel, I love it. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Bye for now.